And if you can believe it, it's a Friday once again.
Well, it looks like you're the one who needs to be taught a lesson, pal. Class is paying 101. The instructor.
And if you can believe it, it's a Friday once again.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti. This is episode 224. Man, I can't believe it. Every time I say that number, in the 200s now. Man, tonight's topic. Boy, what a good mistake to happen tonight during the intro. It cut out. I was like, wait a second. Why did it stop? I've done a lot of these, and I've never seen that happen. It was serendipitous, or at the very least, coincidental. But what a show for a mistake to happen. A show where I'm going to be talking about reflecting upon some of the moments, the times that within comics where I was wrong, learn from mistakes, and I'm adjusting to focus on goals. And man, the one thing I know is I'm going to make more mistakes, and I'll hopefully learn from those mistakes, and I'll hopefully be able to reassess, adjust, and focus on my goals. It gets better every time. I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. I'm sure we all have moments where we do that. I'm sure everybody out there is like, yeah, I'm in the same situation as you. But it means you're trying. It means you're taking, hopefully, a calculated risk. Sometimes they pay off, sometimes they don't. And I'm going to try to keep the conversation mostly tonight because this is a very broad topic if you take it outside of this, because it could apply to anything. I'm going to try to keep it just to comic-related stuff. There's been things I felt about comics or creators or storytelling or whatever that has to do with comics, where some of the time I'm like, yeah, it ended up being that I was right. And then other times I was like, no, I was wrong. I shouldn't have handled it that way. Shouldn't have thought about it that way. Should have let it play out differently. Different kinds of things like that. And the reason that this topic comes to mind tonight is because on alternacomics.com, we are currently funding for remastered editions. Now, these remastered editions are premium editions of these books. For those that read Alterna, and if you're not, you should. The comics, the single issues, are on newsprint, and they're fantastic, and I love newsprint, and it's not going anywhere. We're doing newsprint comics for as long as we possibly can. That's not changing. But over the years, people have asked, can you have kind of like a deluxe, premium, upgraded edition of these single issues? Some of them, they want to see them on upgraded paper stocks, that kind of a thing. Now, I'm not a fan of glossy paper stock for comics, especially for the interior. But the paper stock that we're using for the interior is a silk-coated, kind of like a step above a matte-coated paper stock. It's really nice. Really nice. And we're going to upgrade the cover stock. We're not going to have any ads in it. The pages will be remastered, The art will be remastered. And what I mean by that is that when you do that, when you change the paper stock, when you upgrade or use different paper stock, you have to reformat the art, the color kind of distribution on the page. You also have to maybe consider, whereas on newsprint you wouldn't have had that full bleed splash page, maybe now you do. Maybe now you do. And the reason, because on newsprint, not only will, if every page is full bleed is to the extent of the edge of the page, using the full page. Goes right to the edge. Not only will it get on your fingers when you're reading it, because there's no safe space to grab, there's no white border or anything like that, but also an even more crucial part with this is that if you do that with every page, you do risk the chance of that book warping because the paper's so thin, and having that ink on both sides of the page to the full extent of the page, it can do some funky things sometimes to different copies of the book or to an entire print run. I've seen it happen when we were doing stuff early on where I figured, well, how bad could it be? And we weren't told this by the printer at that point, but I figured, we'll just put it through. And then I read later on, once we had some issues with that, some issues with the issues, I read up about why that's not really advised to do that. So on these remastered books, we could actually go in there and do that and could have a full bleed splash page. But it got me thinking about, taking a look at various books that we've published over the years and putting them through this process, because there's going to be 14 on this first wave here. These are limited run. We're not printing more than 100 of these. A bunch of them will probably be printed less. So the print run will either be 50 or 100. Very, very limited low print run for these. We're not doing big giant print runs. And that's a big reason we're doing these now too, is because we're able to do these without having to do a big, massive print run. So like I said, the newsprint is the thing. It's not going anywhere. These are remastered premium editions. Now, it made me start thinking about the fact that, mistakes get made. And this is a good time to correct some of those mistakes. Maybe there's a typo here. Maybe there was, something that you wanted to play out a little differently, maybe on the lettering or something like that. Maybe whatever it might be. Maybe the creators want to adjust that. Now is the time to do it. And then it got me thinking more about the grander point of mistakes and learning from those things. And now some of these books are, these were published in 2017. Some of the stories are a little older than that. They weren't published first on newsprint single issue. They were published on graphic novel format. And I started really thinking about a bunch of the different books, especially, that it would have been great to see them on here. It would have been great to see them here. Because I published a lot of comics over the years. Hundreds upon hundreds of comics. Working with just as many of those creators. Hundreds and hundreds of creators. But for one reason, contractual, this or that or whatever, things don't work out. People go their separate ways, whatever it may be. Sometimes it was amicable, and it's just the way contracts work. You can't go back. It's creator-owned, I'll turn 100%, so I can't just go in there and say, well, who cares if he's not in contract anymore? I want to publish his book again and reprint it or whatever. I can't do that. You got to respect that for more reasons than one, obviously. But it made me think about, I wish there were a bunch of different things that played out differently. And some of them, it's like, hey, it is what it is. It played out the way it played out because it had to play out that way. Other things, it's like, maybe could have been different, could have worked out differently. But that's life. You can't go back. You can't go back. And it's not to say that there's regrets, because there is no regrets. But it's to say that every situation was a learning moment, because mistakes were made. on both sides, my side, their side. And you learn from that, hopefully, and not do that again, either with somebody else or with your own book or however it may be. And as a publisher, that's constantly what I've been doing. It's learning how to navigate this stuff as best as possible, because every situation is different. Even if the outcome is the same, whether it's signing on a book or parting ways with a creator or however it may be, the way to get there is different. The people you're dealing with is different. The book you're publishing is different. Sometimes the readership that comes in is different. Sometimes certain readers will only be for that one book maybe, and they won't try any of the others. So then if you don't publish that one book, they go away as well. You lose them as readers too. So there's all these different things to kind of take into consideration. And then it got me thinking of the larger scope beyond that. There's so many layers to it. So many layers to the situation within my 18 years of doing this in comics, where I've seen so much transpire in this industry in that short amount of time. I know for some people they think like that sounds like a long amount of time. It's really 18 years is nothing. It's nothing. Maybe within one, lifespan, like my life, it's almost half of it. But it's really nothing in the grand scale of things. But I've seen so much. I've seen a lot of people kind of come and go. I've seen a lot of companies come and go. I've seen a lot of books start, if they do start. I've seen them come to like an abrupt end. I've seen a lot of nonsense and foolishness and stuff that I wish played out differently, whether it was something that I was a part of or whether it was something that I saw someone else being a part of. I've seen a lot of that kind of stuff over the years. And there's always going to be that, to be perfectly honest. That's just how it is. There's always going to be that. So that got me thinking about staying on. And this is all just from bringing it about these books, because there's so much history there. Maybe some stuff you guys are aware of, maybe some stuff you guys aren't. But there's a lot of stuff that I share with you guys, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't. And it's kind of like a tip of the iceberg scenario where I do share a lot with you guys, but there's so much that goes on that isn't really even worth talking about, because it's like in the details of it. Because then you got to explain the context, and then you're only really getting my side of it, and so that's not going to be 100% the truth either, and I can admit that. It's going to be viewed through my lens of how I interpreted the events. And then if you were to hear the same thing from the other individual or whatever, you would see the same thing, different things interpreted through their lens. And I don't even know in those instances if the truth is in the middle. I think both things are just as equally true, and also just as equally nonsensical. And they don't really matter. And that's the thing that makes me sad about the current state of everything I see in, and again, I'm going to stick to just comics. The current state of everything I see in comics right now, whether it's mainstream or independent, I don't care too much about the mainstream anymore. I haven't paid close attention to the mainstream in upwards of maybe 2 years. It is what it is, and that's what it is. That's how I view the mainstream at this point. I've full transparency for those that don't know, I've never worked in the mainstream. I never cared to outside of maybe the first year I kind of started making comics, and everyone wants to like work on this and that, but I mean in a serious capacity. I don't mean like when you're a kid and you're like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I could, work on Spider-Man or something, outside of my first year of making comics, I got bit by the independent bug real bad. And I was just like, I want to make my own stories. I want to just do this. I want to work with other people that are making their own stories too. I don't want to work in the mainstream. And so I've never worked in the mainstream as far as like the corporate comics scenario goes, or one of the other bigger independent publishers or anything like that, because I would consider them mainstream as well when it comes to indie. comics anyway. But so taking that kind of course, I've met a lot of people over the years who, they kind of come in and out of this kind of thing. I don't even want to call it an industry, because it's not really an industry. Comics is barely an industry. Independent comics really isn't an industry. It's sort of like a thing we all do. A thing we all care about and try to do. And for most people, it's kind of a thing you do at a certain point in your life, and then very rarely do you stick with it for more than maybe even a couple of years till you move on to something else. And that's most people. I've talked about this before. Like, if I could do a rough statistic, I'd say about like 60% of people that make indie comics make, or at least try to make one, and then will never do another one again. That's most of the people, from my experience. If I had to like roughly quantify that, then I'd say about maybe 20% are people who, they make a couple. They're around for a bit, but it's not really a lifelong thing. Then there's like 10% that will kind of make a bunch and maybe move on and do other stuff within the realm of comics. But it's not really 100%, they're doing that their whole life, making comics and whatever. Maybe they do something else that has to do with art. Maybe they go to even work with some kind of entertainment company or whatever it may be. And then there's 10% who, and it takes a little bit of luck. A little bit of luck. And all luck really is just sticking with it long enough until something really works. Being really good, working really hard, and sticking with it longer than most would. And that will kind of get you a little bit of luck. And that's that last 10% that work on these kinds of things for the rest of their lives. They're making books for forever. Creating stuff all the time, characters, stories, whatever it may be. If I had to splice it even more, I'd say of that 10%, that little last 10% that does it for the rest of their life, 1% out of that 10%. So 1% of the whole thing are people who are doing something that revolves around one, maybe two stories. It's characters, kind of a thing. So for example, like King Cryptid, let's say. All right, so if I end up doing King Cryptid pretty much the rest of my life, which is something I do plan on doing, I do hope to do, I'm working towards that, I'd be in that 1% of indie creators that does that. And who's in there? You're getting like Billy Tucci with She. You're getting Jeff Smith with Bone. You could say Mignola with Hellboy. McFarlane with Spawn. All that kind of different stuff. All those different creators that you would associate them. Eastman and Laird, Ninja Turtles. Even though they don't really, obviously that's kind of evolved further, especially. Goodness. Ninja Turtles. That's always a funny thing when someone's like, it'll be the next Ninja Turtles. They're still trying to find the next Ninja Turtles. But it's one of those things where you kind of equate them with, okay, they've been doing this pretty much, they're synonymous with it. Dave Sim, Cerebus, that kind of thing. So it's a very, very small percentage. And it makes me think of all the people who kind of had potential that I've worked with over the years, and all the people who have done a lot of great things comic book wise. But for one reason or the other, that was kind of it. And they noped out and they were done. Maybe the money wasn't there. Maybe they couldn't figure out business wise how to make it work. Maybe they only did have like the one literal story in them, because that happens. And they didn't want to continue that. They didn't see a way to continue that, whatever it might have been. I don't know. There's a multitude of reasons for it. And it's not good, bad, or anything. This isn't me saying that, these people were good or bad or however they do it. It's just, this is kind of how I've seen, if I had to quantify the percentages, this is kind of how I've seen it play out. And if someone, wants to make one comic or thinks they're going to make 100 and they just make one and then they quit and they're done, that's not me making a judgment call on them necessarily. That's me just saying that that's the vast majority of what happens. So looking at all this stuff, seeing the way the industry works, seeing the way the indie industry, which isn't really an industry, again, seeing the way that works, there's so many moving parts, there's so many things that happen, there's so many people involved, there's so much. It really is, it's borderline ridiculous, if not full on ridiculous, to see so much of it turn into absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Instead of like really focusing on us trying to make the best things we can make, there's these larger fights, these larger things that have nothing to do with the actuality of making comics, or at the very least making your own comic the best it can be and putting it out there and getting out there, and who cares whatever happens with someone else's thing and what they work on or whatever. And I've been there. I've been at that point sometime where I should have just put my head down and said, you know what, make a mental note to yourself. I do this more nowadays. Make a mental note to yourself and say, all right, I wouldn't want to do that. I see what they're doing and I don't want to do that. Because I'm not going to go and tell someone how to be. So I'm not going to, this isn't one of these like, oh, I'm going to start pointing fingers at whoever. Because I've been there. I know what it's like. You get sucked into it. And I hope that eventually some people, and not to say like, oh, I'm so enlightened now or something like that. It's more that I just eventually got sick and tired of realizing that, wow, I'm putting time and energy, especially energy. And time is really, that sucks too, to lose a lot of time on that. You don't want to look back and be like, wow, I put a lot of time into, I could have done this and instead I did that. What did that get me? Did that move me forward with what I really want to do? And I mean, you got to know what you really want to do too. So, the energy involved in that kind of stuff is kind of soul crushing, It's a much better space to get in there and instead say, okay, I'm going to concentrate on the stuff I got to do and the work I got to do and the comics I want to make and the stories I want to tell and the characters, and get that out there and create. And hopefully people enjoy it. If they do, great. If they don't, hey, I'll do the next one. Maybe they'll like that one. And keep on doing that and find ways to do that and get better at it and take advantage of the avenues before you to do that. And again, I'm not going to say that I don't want to see some people do this, do that, the other thing. I'm talking about what I've done and what I've been in. And I've certainly had my fair share of days where I've, especially years ago, where I've called out, the mainstream or whatever about certain things. And like I said, at this point, I don't care. I haven't really cared that much in almost 2 years. But at this point, I'm seeing the same kind of things happening in the indie space. And I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? Why does that happen? And I'm not at the point, where I'm out there, I'm going to be like, I'm going to call this person out, or I'm going to, send this person a message about why are you saying this, or, hey, you're really talented. Why don't you, focus on your stuff instead? You can leave behind such an impactful legacy. You can inspire more people by the tremendous work you get out there and the great creations you make, as opposed to, the call out of the day or something. And because it's such a weird world we live in now. It feels like we see that in everything. But I think it's so antithetical to creativity to put yourself constantly in that headspace. Growing up playing hockey a lot of the time, they teach you to you want to play the man, You want to play the man, because if you get and cover your man, you get the guy. And this might not work if you're not a hockey fan. Like the puck is the puck. The puck's not going to do anything unless a person has the puck. So if you keep playing the puck, you keep chasing the puck all around, it is so easy to get exhausted, to lose sight of what the goal is, and you're always going to be playing on your heels, essentially, reacting. But if you play the people instead, and don't focus so much on the puck, focus more on the players, focus more on the actual objective, then maybe you can actually get the puck, and then you can have the control and play from a position of strength. So if you constantly are chasing the whole time, it's this thing, it's that thing, it's the other thing, instead of keeping your eyes focused, keeping your objective focused on what's the actual goal, how do you actually win, then sooner or later you realize it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you maybe call the other team out or tell them how much they stink, how awful they are. You're not going to improve. You can call them out all day long, tell them how bad they're doing. It doesn't matter even if you're better than them. Eventually that person will continue to get better, as long as they're not getting sucked into the same trap. That person will continue to get better, and maybe even one day surpass you, because you spent so much time and attention on them instead of on yourself, instead of on what you wanted to accomplish. And that's kind of where I was realizing where I was getting in every now and then. I was going down that road. So I got out of that road, I got off that path, and it allowed me to focus on King Cryptid. It allowed me to focus on all kinds of wonderful things. To even take a step back and have more clarity and realize, like, with the creators that I'm publishing, who seems to really be here? Who seems to really want what I want, which is to do this for the rest of my life and make a character that resonates, make stories that resonate, make stories that matter. And again, not a judgment call. I'm not sitting there saying, like, well, that makes you a good person if you want what I want, or a bad person if you don't want what I don't want. Or if you want what I don't want, I should say. None of that. Just more like what works for what I want to accomplish. Because I like the idea of teamwork. I like the idea of people coming together that all have a varying skill set, that all can do different things at different levels. They all have, I know people hate the word, but they're all diverse. And it's such a shame. It's such a beautiful word. But yet, meanwhile, it's been turned into crap because people have twisted it. So teamwork, for you to succeed as a team, everybody has to bring to the table what their strengths are. And we're all going to have weaknesses, but if everyone is in a team, usually each strength of each individual makes up for the weaknesses of those very same individuals. So again, back to hockey. If you're the star player, if you're the person that can really move around, put the puck in the net, whatever, you usually aren't the guy that's going to be more physical. You're usually not the guy that's going to go out there and get into the tough spots, because you can get injured, and your skill set is more suited towards scoring and helping the team to succeed in that way. But you still need players who could do that. You still need someone who maybe isn't as gifted or concentrated in their skill set in that capacity, but they can play physically. They can do what they got to do. So in a comic, as a creator even, you need different creators that are suited with different abilities, that can tell different kinds of stories, do different kinds of styles. You need different creators on board when you're publishing, that their attitude is there. Attitude first and foremost. There's been some creators I've published over the years where I'm like, wow, talented. to attitude. Stinks. So instead, you can have a great attitude and maybe not be the best, maybe not have a lot of skill just yet, but the attitude will allow you to improve. It will allow you to be wrong because your attitude is saying, I'm going to take risks. I'm going to get creative. That's all being creative is taking risks. And when you take risks, you're going, well, I'm either going to be right or I'm going to be wrong. This is either going to work out or it's not really going to work out. So you want to try again to take calculated risks so they don't really blow up in your face. But you got to still take some risks. But when you have the right attitude, if you do meet with something that's a bit of a failure, whatever it may be, you're not defeated. You're not defeated by it. You're not completely giving up on it or whatever. If anything, if you have a really great attitude, you can look at that and immediately turn that into a positive. Turn that defeat, that stumble into a learning experience, because if you can learn fast from that stuff and turn it around and go, well, I just eliminated one way that I know doesn't work, which means now let's try the next one. And let's use the next opportunity here to take what I learned from my mistakes and shortcomings and what I just did. Don't do those things. And take what worked and do those things. Do more of those things. And eventually you start doing more and more of the things that work and less of the things that don't. And you start realizing that it's not about these big, grand, sweeping gestures of success, things that work out. It's about the little things you did right. It's the accumulation of that. Like in a comic, it's about, these are all little things. But you might think that they're big things. About the lettering, it's about the inking, it's about the art, it's about the writing, it's about each word you use. It's about the lines that are on there. It's about the lines that aren't on there. It's about the composition and the setup. These are all hundreds of little decisions that when you step back, you go, it looks like one big decision. But the truth is that there wasn't one big decision that was made. It's 100 little decisions that were made, each step of the way. And once you do this long enough, you start realizing it's those little things. It's those little things that create the illusion of the bigger thing. So I see a lot of people that focus in the beginning, and I've done this too. You focus on the big problem. The big problem, like I see people, and I kind of mentioned this on the last time on the Alterna stream, because it kept coming up about all ages comics and things like that. And thank you guys again for joining me. If you are here, I appreciate it. And please feel free. There's a link pinned to the top of the chat if you want to join in on the conversation tonight. I'd like to hear from you guys as well about some of the things you're learning, some of the things you want to learn, maybe some of the goals you need to focus on. Realizing like, wow, maybe I'm finding I'm spending too much time here, not enough time there. Maybe I got to work on this, and I'm putting too much time into that. But feel free to join. So, all these different things where I'm seeing people talk about, like saving comics, or getting comics to kids, or a lot of other things where the heart's in the right place, and I understand the bigger point. And I was there at one time too, don't get me wrong. About feeling like, you got to do that because that's an important thing. That's a big important thing that needs to happen, right? And then you eventually start realizing, again, it's about the smaller stuff. It's not about saving comics. It's about making this one comic as good as you possibly can. Or hell, this one panel, this one page, as good as you possibly can. And then put them together. This one story, this one character. It's about making a comic that people say, okay, appeal to kids and things like that. That's a whole other set of problems that I think at some point in time, the indie creator especially has to realize that it's a different world. It's a different market. Now, you could make all ages books, and absolutely, if your heart's in it and you want to make all ages books, you want to make books specifically for kids, great, do that. But at the same time, if your heart, your skill set, your storytelling isn't in that spot, don't feel like you should do that. You want to be true to what it is that you want to do. Otherwise, if you start going down a path trying to be all these different things for someone else or some audience or whoever it may be, you're going to be on a surefire path towards failure. I can promise you that. You got to figure out what it is that you really want to do, that you want to bring to life, that matters to you. And you got to learn as much as you can to get something out there as good as possible. The concept of like thinking and acting globally, it's one thing to think globally and act locally in every sense of the word. Be aware of the larger picture, but be aware also that you need to only be able to focus on what it is you can actually do. But when you start trying to do far too much, you start realizing that what you end up doing is you end up kind of trying to control other people and what they're doing. You end up trying to, and this is as a creator-owned publisher over the years, I've really tried to do my best to help and coach people, to help and not just say, you know what, I'll just do that for you. I'll tell your story for you. I'll change it up. I'll make it like this. How about you do it like this and like that and the other thing? I've tried my best, and I think I've succeeded in this capacity, to respect the storyteller, to respect the fact that they want to tell the story the way they want to tell it, and help them to do that as best as possible, and be there if they had questions or need someone to brainstorm with or bounce an idea off of. I can't even tell you guys the amount of times where I practically gave people ideas that I could have just used for my own stories, or I just spent, dozens upon dozens of hours, sometimes hundreds of hours, depending how long the creator was with Alterna and I was publishing them, in coaching them to do all the different things that they would hopefully be able to do with some success. So it's one of those things where I really love seeing people succeed, and I love seeing people make the things they want to make. But I have to accept along the way that you can't do everything for everyone. There's going to be people, far more often than not, that you try to coach them, you try to help them, and it's not going to work out. And you could sit there and go, well, that's reflecting failure on me, and maybe I shouldn't do this. Or you go, you know what, I'm going to learn from that and not do that with the next person. Now, I'm also not a publisher. I'm a writer and a creator and an artist. So I had to realize, well, what do I want to do? What really, creatively, what really makes me want to create? What gets me going on these comics? Why do I want to do this with my life? And I love publishing other people, and I love helping them out, and love helping them to create their stories. But again, I'm not someone who's sitting there and going, well, I really enjoy comics, but I don't know how to do any of it, and I don't really want to do any of it creatively. So I'll just help people get published, and I'll do that for them. Eventually, I start realizing that there's a lot of things happening where my time is so divided up, my energy is so taken down different paths with different creators, different books, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not doing anything creatively. And most of the time, it wouldn't work out with various creators and books. And I sit there going, wow, that's a lot of time, energy, and money that I put into somebody else that I could have put into what I wanted to do. And you hit a couple dozen of those people, and eventually, it gets through even the thickest skulls like mine, where you go, maybe you do this instead. Maybe you concentrate on that instead. And that's where I had to hit a moment where I said I was wrong with my approach with a lot of that. Now, this isn't one of these, I'm getting rid of, Alterna and creators and this and that. No. It's about focusing and going, okay, well, what do I like about this book, this creator, et cetera, et cetera? What is something that we can achieve together? And I had to assess that. And I had to kind of work towards that. And not necessarily change the goal. The goal is always to make the best comics possible, the best things possible, and keep learning and making them and getting them out there and creating. But change the strategy. Change the path a bit. Don't get so obsessed with being on the one path that I'm not seeing the other paths that are right there as well. But I'm thinking I got to take that one path the whole time. I'm getting caught up in that. And so much of it has been about that. And it's interesting when these kinds of projects come up, like this all this stuff got triggered from doing this remastered edition series. All these different memories, all these different experiences, all this kind of stuff. And all the different moments because every single thing, I've said it before, I feel very strongly, every single thing you do leads you to the current point of where you're at, whether that's good or bad. 10 years ago, I couldn't be at the point that I'm at today, and I think every one of you guys, you could probably say the same thing. So it's one of those things where you look at it and you go, well, good, bad, whatever it was, this is where I'm at. What do I do with where I'm at right now? And there's many times where you don't, at least I didn't, where you don't have that moment of clarity when you're going through something. You're just kind of going through it, and maybe you're lamenting it. Maybe you're thinking of yourself almost as a victim in the moment. Maybe you're thinking you don't have any power in the situation. Maybe you're wishing that you weren't there. I certainly experienced stuff like that throughout my life. But when you hit a certain moment, a certain time, and some people call it rock bottom, some people call it, an epiphany. There's various stages for it. It doesn't have to always just be hitting rock bottom. But there's different moments that come along where you get that clarity. And you start to realize what matters and what you want to focus on. And all of a sudden, a whole new path is lit up. And you're like, that's the path. And it'll feel like the craziest thing in the world to you because it is so obvious and often something that you were kind of overlooking the whole time. And you felt like, how did I not see that? That was there the whole time. And once you start actively being aware that you're in the moment and you're in the now, you start going like, well, I have power and control in what happens right now. I can either engage in this or not engage in that. Every single choice that I make at this moment is of my own doing. Every single thing that will happen to me is because I am choosing to allow it to happen to me, or I am choosing to actively pursue that direction. And when I hit that moment as a comic creator, as a publisher, it was bizarre. And it's been interesting to be in that moment and realize every single time you got something to talk about, something to pursue, a different kind of path to go down creatively. What is it that you want to do? Having the goals you want to achieve and accomplish. All these different things that I didn't really give a whole hell of a lot of thought about. I had a bigger picture thought to them. But I wasn't breaking them down. And I wasn't focused, zeroing in on them, on the smaller stuff. So sometimes those larger goals would often go unaccomplished because I didn't break them down enough to realize, well, how the hell do I even achieve those things? It was just, grander gestures. So tonight, that's mostly what I'm talking about. And if you guys are in the chat, you want to join, link is pinned to the top of the show. We got a couple people here in the green room, so let's see. Let's say hello to Picarderer. What's up?
Hello there. How are you, Pete?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm just I'm kind of phasing in and out of life. That's very much what happens.
In what way do you mean? Can you be more specific for me?
Well, I'd say, okay, I want to kind of stick with your subject. So there's this idea in mistakes, I was thinking about jumping the shark. You know the expression?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, when you do something and basically the implications are so kind of long term that you just can't really say whether what happened was good or bad, kind of defies those sort of qualifications.
What are you doing right now that you think you're jumping the shark?
Oh, well, I have some family things that are pretty impressive in terms of how cold it's gotten. Which I wanted to tell you, I'm from Winnipeg, and so no stranger to the cold. But I remember watching your show, and you had that lady on who had seen some good sightings from Winnipeg, alien sightings, those kind of things.
Oh yeah, Kathleen Marden, right?
I'm betting that's who it was. Yeah. It's so I'm calling because I do have a cartoon I wanted to share with you guys. But alien shit. I'll just say that. It's definitely, it amounts to sooner or later.
Picarderer, I thought you were staying on topic tonight.
I am, because I just feel like it's like, are they mistake? What's a mistake? Like in music, mistake is just something people haven't heard before, and that's like most of existence, really. I mean, your character's King Cryptid.
I mean, I think most people could probably, at least I quantify a mistake, define it as being a thing that you did that resulted in an unintended or unwanted outcome. That's what I would say that my mistakes are. And to not do that thing again, that would yield most likely that same result. If you want to talk about like maybe the happy accident factor, getting into like a Bob Ross sort of thing.
Whatever the mistake was.
Because I think it's kind of like why we do anything. I think we do what we do because given the moment in time, we're doing something with the best of our knowledge and the best of our experience at that point in time. And that the only way that we learn is by going forward with that, making those mistakes, because everything's practically a mistake.
That's the whole thing. It's a big cosmic mistake,
And then you go, well, that worked out differently. And then you go, well, is that good that it worked out differently, or is that bad? Do I want to avoid that? Because sometimes you make a mistake and you're like, wow, that's actually pretty great, and things work out, and you didn't realize, what had occurred maybe, or intended it to occur that way, but it did, and you try to kind of repeat that. You got to reassess that and see, okay, well, what did I do here? What did I do there? But I think
probably a lot of us got here because of a little mistake,
Oh well, I think there's big mistakes that happen, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So hey, let me play this tune for you. Can I share this cartoon?
Sure.
Okay. Is it the present button?
Yes, it is. And if this cartoon doesn't have anything to do with the topic at hand tonight, Carter, I'm going to have to say goodbye.
Well, it's actually being stubborn, so maybe. Let's see. They're always stubborn, the robots.
All right, Picarderer. I'm going to have to say goodnight to you, my friend.
All right. I'll leave it.
All right. Thanks for stopping by.
Peace, brother.
Appreciate it. Have a good one. All right. Up next, we've got Hidden Hand Media. How's it going?
Hey, what's up?
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. What's up?
Oh man, I had questions because I'm attempting to make my own book for the first time.
Okay.
And I think I spent today kind of like just like a dog chasing his tail.
Oh, that'll happen, especially with your first, second, third, fourth, fifth book.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
that'll happen.
I didn't know what the hell I was doing because I was like, I started drawing, and then I was like, oh man, like, does anybody have my name? I should check if I copyright my name. Does anybody have a copyright? Should I trademark it? Should I do this? And I'm like, and then I wasted like, I don't know, 3 hours trying to figure out how to copyright it. And then I was like, wait a minute, it's kind of expensive, so like I can't do that right now anyway. And which one should I do? Trademark or copyright? And then I was like, and there was a whole bunch of other stuff that I don't know anything about either came up, and I was just like, damn, like I should have just stuck with drawing all day.
Well, copyright would be your story, would be the created work. Trademark would be the name of the title of the product.
Yeah, that's what I want to name the book, like the company or whatever,
Yeah. So some people think, and to be perfectly honest with you, most trademarks, I know this sounds weird, but most trademarks are not trademarked. And what I mean by that is like most titles of products and things like that, there's almost like a common law trademark kind of a thing involved in establishing history and things like that. But where it gets tricky is if your common law trademark, your title of a product, it's already been trademarked and registered. Yeah. And registration of trademarks, you're right, it is expensive. It's a weird process. Copyright eventually expires. Trademark could be for forever. You could keep on going in there and every couple of years pay it, and it could be in perpetuity. As long as someone's paying for that trademark, it's trademarked. And trademark gets a little bit odd because you can have a copyright-free public domain story with a certain character, and then meanwhile, the name of the character could be trademarked, which means you can't put it in the title of the product. And that's where some people get really confused, because you can still mention the character by name within the work and not violate a trademark, but you can't title the piece after the trademarked name.
Yeah.
And some people go, and just the one thing about that, just to clear it up, some people go, well, trademark on a character, on a book. Well, that's the character name. It's not, but it's as soon as it becomes the title of the product, you have to think of it as the mark of trade, the mark of commerce.
Yeah.
You have to think of it like that. And some people within a creative space go, well, what do you mean? It's the title of the book. Yes, but the title of the book is a product's name.
Yeah.
So once you start viewing it like that, it becomes a little bit clearer, but it's still all confusing and insane.
Yeah, I don't even think I have to worry about it either. Cause
imagine if copyright and trademark was 1,000, 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
boy.
don't think I have to worry about that yet, though, because I was just, I don't know, I think I was just procrastinating or something.
Yeah.
Doing
get your story, get your character made.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm like, I wrote before, but I never really wrote to be like, okay, I'm definitely gonna finish something and do that or whatever. So I know I've heard you say if when you write something, go over it again and again, and make sure don't do the first draft and be like, this is perfect, and go over it again and make sure every time I go over it I find something else to change, and I'm like, oh man, this doesn't make sense, or maybe I should add something else and this makes more sense. and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's really good to go over
okay,
everything.
so one piece of advice for you and for a lot of people out there, whether you've been doing this for a long time or you've been doing this for you just started, really try to simplify your storytelling. What I mean by that is try to have as few twists and turns, as few complexities as possible, as few levels of like subtext and buried, little story arcs in between and little things here and there and all that stuff that you're gonna lose your mind trying to come up with a story where you're gonna find that you're no longer telling a story, and what you're trying to actually do is really kind of out clever the reader. And so and there's a lot of people, every single creator writer has been guilty of that, and we all think like, oh man, that's so good, like they'll never see it coming. and you're just like, in a way you're right, they'll never see it coming because they probably stopped reading after the first 5 or 6 pages.
I'm not trying to do that at all.
Yeah, so when you find that you're almost like over tinkering, you want to start, then take a step back and look at your story beats and look at how is this actually playing out. Are you getting too complicated with it? Because that's usually the mark of like you're now starting to get too confusing with the storytelling.
Yeah.
So there is a moment where you do have to go, all right, enough is enough. And if this still isn't working out, it's because I haven't simplified it enough to be concise and clear, and I'm focusing on the wrong things. And it kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about tonight. It's a larger philosophical viewpoint of what we're talking about tonight, but it plays into the storytelling that you're trying to do with your comic. So I know it's tough sometimes when you're getting started, but hopefully that helps. Did you have any other kinds of questions about?
Yeah, because I'm kind of, my main issue I think is kind of motivation, I think, or like, because there's like there's a bad guy, but I'm like, I have to figure out, I'm sort of trying to figure out, it's sort of like a Twilight Zone-ish story, it's not like superheroes, it's just like regular people. It's one of your pet peeves, actually. I don't think it's character driven, I think it's story driven.
That's not really
like you kind of don't like that, but
it's not like a pet peeve of mine necessarily. It's just more you got to understand what you're telling.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, why should I have to make sure like people care about the characters, but I'm trying to figure out too, the bad guy, what his motivation is, and kind of like how to what's the word I'm looking for, what actually the reason why he's doing what he's doing, and then try to get the people try to figure out how to defeat him or whatever, and hopefully how that all happens isn't stupid. Like the end.
Yeah.
Hopefully people are like, oh my god, like I read this whole story and like the end is like kind of dumb, and then it kind of a dumb ending kind of people discount the whole story usually.
So I don't know if this is going to help you, but you can use this for any character when it comes to motivation. It's what is someone after and why are they after it? What does someone want and why do they want it? Why is this thing important to them? So break down that overall motivation into these smaller kinds of things. And then now you can have the basis for conflict, you can have the basis for teamwork, you can have the basis for the entire story structure. So if your villain, if you're trying to create like a compelling villain, the bigger the impetus to them wanting what they want, the bigger the thing that made them all of a sudden one day hell-bent on going like, that's becoming obsessed with that goal, whatever that thing that they must attain, then the bigger the cause. So trauma, I've said this before on the show, trauma creates characters. Trauma creates people. Every single thing that has happened to you in your life that was a traumatic event has shaped you larger than anything else. And the same thing goes for everybody else in the chat. The same thing goes for me. Now, it's how do you react to that trauma? Do you want to inflict that level of emotional trauma upon everyone else who comes your way, especially if they perceived that they've done you wrong? Or are you looking to help people avoid experiencing that same hurt? And that's often kind of in superhero comics anyway. It's usually, to really simplify it, it's usually kind of what defines a superhero and what defines a supervillain. But the whole conflict that comes about with the motivations is because usually there's characters that have diametrically opposing goals and things that they want to achieve. So you get the villain who wants one thing and the hero that wants the other, which is the exact opposite of what that villain wants. Yeah. But it's to come up with, that motivation for your characters. I mean, you really gotta answer those questions first. I mean, does that help you at all in being able to come up with some kind of motivation?
Yeah, I kind of think I was almost there with it, but I'm just, a little self-conscious about it, or kind of like, oh man, I hope this is dumb. Stuff like that. Well, that's the only thing I'm worried about. Is like, man, I hope people don't think this is stupid.
It's going to be dumb to somebody. Yeah, you got to get that out of the way. You got to get that out of the way.
Yeah, because I'm not trying to be like, whoa, this is gonna be so smart. Like people are gonna be like, wow, like this guy's a genius. I'm not trying to do like that, a genius thing. I just want to. It kind of came to me. Like I'm not even like trying to write. You know what I mean? I was kind of whatever. I had some
did
things
you want to share?
It came to my head, huh?
Did you want to share any of it? Did you want to share any of like in a specific way what it is you're trying to struggle with?
Well, it's kind of like this villain has to come. It's sort of like, I hope it doesn't sound stupid. It's kind of like a Twilight Zone-y kind of thing. Like this ship comes down from outer space, because he's running out of fuel, and I can't say what the fuel is or whatever. And then basically people have to figure out how to get him to go away. Like regular everyday people have to figure out.
So who's the villain? Is it the
alien?
The alien?
Yeah. And it's like, there's a bartender and a waitress. There's like two cops.
Well, what makes him villainous? What makes him
because
morally
of how he gets fuel. Or what? So they don't know. Like the people don't know that that's how he gets fuel, and it's kind of like a messed up way he gets fuel.
So he's like killing people, doing bad things, doing.
Yeah. I can't. It would give away. I'll count it. That part I kind of have to hide till like towards the end of the book.
Okay, so this villain he sounds more of like maybe he's like the antagonist as opposed to like a morally corrupt villain. Is he doing it out of evil and sadistic reasons, or is he doing it out of like, is he more like a Galactus type where he's just kind of, this is the way he is, and if the shark's got to eat fish to survive, that doesn't make him the shark evil for killing these things. Yeah, but to the fish, the shark's a pretty bad dude.
That's what I kind of have to figure out, because it is kind of messed up how he does that. And then when the people see it, it's just like, oh my god, like this is insane. Like can let these people go or whatever. And it's like, I can't, if I let these people go, then I can't get home. And they have to figure out how to get them to leave without doing more damage to people.
Okay, so I mean, you're setting up a story that's like a moral quandary. Yeah. Where you're gonna have to allow the reader to interpret whether or not this guy is a villain.
Okay, that's good for me.
But that's the important thing here. Now, with any story you tell, you got to make sure that you allow room for that, for interpretation. And what I mean by that is this, and we see a lot of it out there where you're supposed to be like, here's the villain because this and that and the other things, and then when we told you that they're bad, and then here's the hero and we tell you that they're good and this and that, and it is like a show don't tell, but you're gonna still tell because you're storytelling. So you're still going to tell the course of events, but you want to provide examples. You want to show them doing certain things. You want to show the characters in a certain way where a reader could almost even understand why they have to do what they're doing, even if they don't like it. And then you let the reader decide. Good, bad, was that evil, was that villainous? But when you have something, because it sounds like you have a story that's a little more ambiguous with morality, and it's more about the interpretation of it. When you have more of a simplified story of good and evil, then it sounds more like you would have a separate alien comes along that's like tracking down this alien that's crash landed, and they know that they do these bad things to get fuel and whatever, and they're gonna stop them. That's kind of like a different way of telling that story. And then you would have this kind of setup where it's more of like a good and an evil sort of thing. It's kind of like, you ever see that movie with Dolph Lundgren, I Come in Peace?
Oh yeah.
I think it's called like Dark Angel or something too.
It's been a while. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like that kind of vibe where like the Terminators, you get Terminator 2, and it's like that kind of vibe of like there's something that comes in, and then there's also the other thing that comes into, and it's trying to stop the bad thing. But the bad, like the T-1000 in Terminator 2, let's say, isn't necessarily like evil. It's trying to achieve an objective that is the desired outcome of that race of robots and AI. Because what they're doing is they want what they want. They think that that's the best outcome. And that's how you get it open to interpretation through our own lens. We view it as like, well, that outcome for them to succeed really sucks for all of humanity and for the characters in the story that we are growing a fondness for. So then you go, well, that's the bad guy. Even though morally, through their lens, they're not doing anything that they view as bad, because if they did, they wouldn't do it. So you see what I mean? So villains are complicated, because villains, it turns into, every single thing you have them do, if they would view it as bad, then they wouldn't do it. So everything they're doing to them is justified.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And it's the same thing with heroes. Heroes are almost more reactive than proactive. Villains are a little more proactive than reactive. Like, because as soon as a hero starts to become more proactive, like if a hero just like bursts through like the villain's home and just takes him out, that's more of like a villainous act.
Yeah, like
so
like a vigilante.
Yeah, so like you're kind of more as a heroic figure, you're more kind of like the thing that stands between the proactive villain doing something out of a selfish motivation and innocent lives that are either caught in the way, or your own life, or those that you care about. And that's, as a hero, you're kind of doing that. But as soon as you start writing the hero to be a bit more proactive, and they start taking out the villain characters, and they start, getting them before they get them, they start getting the villain before the villain gets the hero, you kind of almost start writing a villain character, because the sympathy starts to go towards the villain character. It's a weird thing, and we see it all the time. We see it play out even in the world.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, so
I don't like those.
Exactly.
Stories.
So it's always about more like, because that's not peace. Peace isn't about the constant, never-ending pursuit, the proactive pursuit of eliminating every kind of morally objectionable whatever under the basis of whatever the protagonist is, under their morality. Because that's a slippery slope that always turns into villainy every time. So that's not necessarily, it's a difficult thing, and I get where you're coming from with what your story is, but that's why I say, like, simplify different things, because otherwise you'll start going down certain paths, especially in a story that's like a moral quandary, where you'll feel like eventually you've wrote yourself into a corner and you don't really know what it is you want to say with the story anymore. And that's important. Figure out
Yeah.
what is it you want to say with the story, and then play up to that objective.
Okay.
And
yeah.
don't worry too much about, because I'm guessing this
When I
isn't
write
like
things.
I'm guessing this isn't like an ongoing series, is it?
No. It's something that it kind of just like all came in my head like all at once, sort of thing. You know, I was just like, one day I was just like, holy cow! Like this whole thing, I was like, this would be like weird if this happened, and it all just like popped in my head. And I was like, all right, I should do this then.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, finally, I've been drawing forever, like my whole life. So I'm like, always wanted to do comics. I'm like, why the hell haven't I? I'm in a situation where I'm kind of like, you know, I have to do stuff that I want to do now.
Well,
because of,
think about
you know,
writing the
reasons.
story out first. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh, I have. I've written it
Yeah.
out. Yeah. And then just take it from there. So, yeah, I'm kind of losing focus really because I'm trying to do like maybe I should draw a little, maybe I should write more, maybe I should do this more, you know. And I'm just like, just do the drafts, finish the drafts, and then draw.
Yeah, and if you don't
Basically.
feel, and this is something that I learned very early on in my career when I needed years and years of work on my art to get to a better spot that I felt more confident in it. But I learned that, you know, just hire an artist, work with an artist that you feel like, okay, that is a look I'm going for with this story, you know. So if you're doing like a short story or something, whatever it might be, even if it's just one issue, that's this story, and you want to work with an artist, you know, hire somebody and work with them together. And if you feel like you're not up to either the quality level that you would like to see on the art, or you don't have the time and inclination to do that, you know, think about working with someone, and maybe that's a possibility for you.
I wish I could afford that. Yeah.
Well, you
I know
never
who I
know.
would. I know the style and everything I want, and who would fit that and everything. But I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, though. You never know, because I've heard that conversation happen a lot too. But there's also a lot of artists out there that are looking for someone to give them a shot on any level, just so they could even build up a portfolio. You know, because otherwise the artist is going to just work for themselves for free.
Yeah.
You know, so if you have no experience and you're an artist, but you're pretty serviceable and you can do the job, and you're new as well, you know, maybe get together with another writer, and, you know, both of you are inexperienced, but maybe you have potential, and you'll be surprised. There's a lot of artists that could come in at a pretty reasonable rate in terms of getting something done. Because obviously this isn't going to be something that, you know, it sets the world on fire and we're going to sell 1 million copies and whatever. You're more getting something to kind of really get your foot in the door and be like, hey, I made something. And discover more about yourself as a creator in the process, as opposed to, you know, trying to really establish a comic line or a company or whatever it may be. You know, it's more at this point for you, it's about proving to yourself that you can do it and you want to do it. And that's, I think, something that a lot of early creators, like, they just overlook that point entirely, and they're so
Something to leave
concerned
behind, you know.
Yeah, it becomes more of a concern of like, well, I want to walk in the footsteps of the greats that I loved. And it's like, just make the comic. Just make a comic. Don't worry about like your massive comic book legacy and being a part of, you know, the history and the pantheon of legends or something.
I'm gonna be the next Jack Kirby, and you know, invent the whole universe. No, I don't care about that. I just want to get something done. And like, did you find? Because I noticed too. Like, I mean, I've drawn, you know, thousands of pictures or whatever, and I found too the first time I tried to draw like in panels, and I haven't done it in a long time. Like, I used to do it a lot when I was younger. You know, like I'm 45 now, but in my 20s I used to just like randomly just draw little comics, and I'm like trying to draw in a panel. I found I was like, what the hell? Like, I was like, holy crap! Like, this is like really challenging. Like, to get perspective and things like that. Did you find like the first time you tried to do that, you were like, oh my god, like this is it's a whole nother kind of
Oh yeah, I mean, so much so that my very first comic, I was like, forget this panel crap. I'm just making splash pages.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
It's a complete and stupid mess. And then eventually you realize, hey, idiot, you could tell a better story by utilizing panels.
I've been looking at Nexus because like Steve Rude does that a lot. He'll do like a whole page, but kind of like no panels and kind of jumping around a little bit.
Yeah,
Like,
and again, it's one of those like you gotta master the rules before you can bend and break them, sort of thing.
yeah.
Because then you know when to apply certain things when you should, and you use effectively.
I know nothing, dude.
But-
I've been actually going back
yeah.
to like basics. I'm like, oh my, I'm going back to.
Well,
like,
that's good.
I went from high school to kindergarten, right
Yeah.
now. You know.
Well, that's good. I
So-
mean, that's something that you got to establish that foundation. It'll help you.
Yeah.
It's the same thing whether it's art, whether it's any aspect of comic creation, the writing, the lettering, the inking, anything, coloring. Even coloring, people all the time are like, oh, how do I practice my coloring? And I'm like, well, there's these things called coloring books.
Color in it.
And you can practice on them with already drawn images. And people will sometimes think that that's the craziest advice they ever heard, but it's like, well, instead of you going in there, drawing something or swiping something from somewhere, just get a coloring book at like the Dollar Tree, and you can test out your color theory. You can test out certain colors with certain palettes and certain things, and just do that. And just use some Crayola markers, use some crayons. You just want to get color on the page before you start diving into expensive everything and whatever else. You can go in there and just test it out fast. Now you can do something like that digitally, but honestly, unless you already want to really commit, that stuff can end up being time consuming, getting like the equipment to do digital coloring and the programs and everything else. So if you're really just getting in there the first time, you want to be a colorist and you know pretty much the basics or whatever, you want to test it out in the simplest way possible, like we all did when we were kids. Get a coloring book and have some fun. And just get some colors on the page, and the same thing happens with drawing. You want to start drawing? Just get a notebook. Just get some blank pieces of paper. Start drawing. You want to start writing? Just start writing. You don't have to have like every single, like this whole huge empire of supplies around you before you can say, all right, now I can get started. Because there's so many people that they concentrate on getting ready that they never get started.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. You know what's funny? Every time I watch an art stream or something, like remember Kim Jong-gi?
Oh yeah.
People would just always go, and he made a video about it too, like or he titled the video. Everybody was like, "What kind of pen do you use?"
Yeah, thinking that the secret was in there.
Yeah, and then he did one video with like a Bic pen and did this whole huge thing. And it's like it's not the pen, man.
Yeah. The tools will just help you to get an effect that you want to get. That's all, to get your desired outcome. But if you don't know how to do it, it's not going to do it for you. It's not like all of a sudden you got the right equipment or the most expensive whatever, and now you're like, oh man, look at me, I'm a pro now. I can do this. I'm amazing at it. No, you still gotta.
I'm waiting for an artist on an art stream to be like, just draw, damn it. Like, I don't want to answer any more questions. Start drawing.
Just draw. Seriously.
Because everybody's like, how do I get as good as you? How do I do it? Just draw, man. That's it. But it's, it's human. We all kind of start thinking too much, or you get out of, like what you were saying before, like not staying in the moment, in the now.
Yeah.
And worrying too much about, the future.
Totally.
And that's the work. That's one thing I work on a lot lately. It's just trying to, breathe. Even though I'm talking like, anxious right now, but, breathe a little bit.
No, you're fine.
Focus on, thanks. Just focus on the moment and, trying to get your breathing down. So even drawing sometimes, like, I start to get dizzy because I hold my breath when I'm doing a line or something.
Oh, yeah.
You ever do that?
Oh,
you notice, like, man, I've been holding my breath for like, a minute or two.
Sometimes you gotta, depending on, what it is you're doing. You want to really make sure you get that line right.
Yeah, you get anxious. Like, I'm going for this line now.
But yeah, once you become conscious of it, then you start to be like, all right, I gotta not do that.
Did you cut your hair off?
Oh yeah, maybe about a month and a half ago.
I thought something was weird.
Yeah.
Not that your face is weird, but
I cut it off every it gets well, I donate it to Locks of Love.
Oh.
And so I think they take like I want to say 10 inches is how long they take the hair's got to be when you donate it.
Oh.
And I think it was at like 13. And we were getting like a heat wave. And I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I was gonna wait till like sometime in August and then cut it off, and I'd have a little bit more, because I like it a little bit longer. I was like, it's already long enough to donate if I cut it pretty short. So let me just do that. And I was like, and then get the best of both worlds. I could donate it, and I don't have to lose my mind in the heat.
Yeah. All right.
But now it starts anew, another year and a half or so.
Yeah, me too. I got like, I'll get. No, I'm just kidding. I can't even grow hair anymore. Oh, well.
I'm gonna hit that point one day. I gotta keep doing it as long as I can do it.
Enjoy it while you have it.
But yeah, man. So if you're all set, I'll let you go. Otherwise, did you have any other question?
No, I really appreciate it. It helped a lot, man. Thank you so much, man.
No
I really
problem,
appreciate
man. All right. Well, I hope it helps with your story.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And yeah, no problem. All the best to you, man.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take it easy. All right. And I'm realizing how rude of me. It's an hour and 20 minutes. I didn't say hello to a lot of you guys. I apologize. Ara, how's it going, Ara? I hope you're still with us. Cole King, hey, how's it going, Cole? Good to see you. We got Blake Powell that was here at least earlier. Don B, how's it going, Don? William, what's up, William? Hope you're doing well. Rachel's here too. How's it going, Rachel? Comics for Life, what's up, Comics for Life? Randy Scribner was here at least at 9:36. That's when he was here. Buddha Bear, what's up, Buddha Bear? Hopefully you're doing good. We got Lord Ragin Goblin. How's it going, LRG? Hope you're doing well. We also have Warzord here. Warzord asking, when you write for comics, do you do outline to prose to panel or outline to panel layout? So what I do, and I used to do a more traditional script, which is basically just, you know, the dialogue of the characters, what they're doing, the scene description, you know, even maybe the direction of the camera. And what I mean by the camera is, you know, whether it's a close-up, whether the shot is kind of an establishing shot of a setting, whatever it may be, you know, you kind of direct certain things to the artist. Used to do that. But that's when I was working more with artists that were starting up and were new, just like I was at writing. Now what I do is I do scene descriptions, and I tell the artist a story. So every single page of the script is essentially just describing, this is what's happening in the scene, this is how the story is playing out, here's an idea of the emotion behind what's playing out, and the words, and the dialogue is very, very loose. It's not usually the finished dialogue whatsoever, if there is any dialogue that I mention to them. And I let them know that if it's going to be a splash page, I let them know. And I let them know that if there's a certain moment where we have to emphasize the dialogue, then I'll give a close approximation of the dialogue. Now, I'm in a unique scenario because I'm the writer and I letter my own stuff, so I can go in there and letter what I need to letter. I have an idea of what the dialogue would be, what captions would be like, all that stuff. But see, all that stuff is largely inconsequential to the artist. The artist needs to know how to set up the page and the composition and the panels. Now, you can also dictate the panels and say, okay, this is going to have 3, this is going to have 4 or 5, if you can visualize it properly. But I like to work with artists. They do thumbnails first, and then they'll give me back their interpretation of how they want to lay out the page. And then we work back and forth like that. Then they do a penciled page, and then they do an inked page, and then if they're coloring, we get colors in there too, and all that kind of stuff. So as far as the script goes, it's me giving a story description. It's me just telling the artist a story, and then visually they interpret how would that story look in comic book form. So there's a lot of trust that has to exist, obviously, between me and the artist, but that's how I lay out my scripts. It's not necessarily, there are people who do it that way, but it's not necessarily what you would find as like the most traditional advice for scripts. But for me, I always find that a lot of the dialogue is going to change anyway, because you get back the art from the artist, and sometimes, if not almost a lot of the time, you get it back and you're like, wow, they did something visually here that was more interesting than what I had originally hoped for. So there's a happy accident, a good mistake. And I want to work and rewire my dialogue or captions or whatever for what's happening visually. My philosophy as a writer is that my writing should accompany the art in a way that maximizes the art. My art on the books is the number one thing to me. So the artist's doing the art. That's number one. The writing's number two. Now, it doesn't mean that the writing is bad. It doesn't mean the writing should take a step down. But it means that you know when to have writing in there and when not. Because the more writing you put in there, along with the same thing with the more panels you put in there, it's going to affect the pacing of the book. That affects like how quickly the reader will read through the book and how quickly they won't. So that's how you can really play up pacing, is by adding in those elements, whether more or less. You add in more panels, it slows the pacing down in some ways, as long as they have writing. Now, if you add a bunch of panels, it actually quickens the pacing because it feels like you're seeing a sequence of film. There's no time to really study the panel. It's just boom, 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 boom. Like if you have like a 9-panel action scene with no words, that's quick. That's going to feel quick. But if you've got like 3 panels and there's some text here and there's a conversation going, that's going to slow the pacing down. That's going to allow for a moment of, maybe you want to play it up. Maybe you want to play up this moment of kind of either tension or ease, and then hit with another scene or a page turn, because page turns are huge when it comes to being able to elicit an emotional response from the reader. Some kind of reveal, some kind of surprise, some kind of moment of, intensity. Everything's about playing up emotion. So that's the way that I really approach the script and the story when I give it to the artist. Let's see, we got Cole here, says, I think social media has a lot to do with the issues you're talking about. There's a lot of stuff. And obviously that's the ultimate distraction in the day and age that we live in. Even though there's a lot of people that are not on social media. I know sometimes it feels like the whole world is on there and everything in and of the world exists in that little, usually on your phone, in that little screen. But it's important, again, to realize, like, hey, I can just put that down and not engage. And I had to hit that point, too, where there was stuff that I was like, I felt like it had more control over me than I did of it. And you feel compelled. I felt compelled, anyway, to partake. And then I realized, like, you're in it. And you hit enough instances where you're like, wow, that's a lot of time that I could have dedicated to this other thing instead. And I certainly went down that road. And no more. Let's see. Buddha Bear says, Warzord, he has said for King Cryptid, he gives the artist the outline and lets them also tell the story. So there you go. And Cole, thank you for letting them know. You can actually get a copy of my script so you can see exactly what the artist sees. It's helped me a lot with my own script. Well, I'm glad to hear that, man. Good to know, Cole. And thank you for putting that link up there on the chat for that script. That's for King Cryptid 5 to 9. 5 to 9. The script for 1 to 4, that's already sold out. We're not making copies of those. It's not going to be up for reorder. Buddha Bear says you'll need an alternate membership to get one of those. Just FYI, I may have one for sale soon. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. Jeff Stylor. Hey, how's it going? Oh, looks like we had a Bogan raid from Michael Bancroft. Thank you, Michael Bancroft. I appreciate that. Randy says, do you consider all ages to be a different market? Yes and no, in a way. And the reason yes is because of the fact that the publishers that dominate that space, it is very clearly dominated. Now, you don't have to be going into creating to think like, oh, well, I got to compete with so and so and everyone else. I mean, that's kind of how things go anyway. But you can create whatever story you want to create. Now, as far as like market goes, if you want to talk like that side of it, business and marketing and yada yada and whatever, I don't suggest that any creators, even especially on the indie level, I don't think you guys should even focus on that. And what I mean by that is that I'm not saying don't focus on like what would appeal to people or what you think would sell or whatever on that level. I mean in terms of like what you see with like the marketing and the commercial aspect side of the comics or the book industry. Because that is, and we see it all the time, it's a weird cyclical feedback loop mess of just regurgitated storytelling over and over and over again. It's a lot of the same stuff we see that's retcon, rebooted, recycled, all that stuff all the time. And if you start playing into that system, you'll start all of a sudden realizing that your creativity is going to take a nosedive because you are a slave to the trend of what sells, as opposed to actually creating something that not only interests you, but may interest other people out there that are just absolutely tired of that rinse and repeat cycle. So that's why I know what you're saying here, Randy, about it, being a different kind of thing and whatever, but I do want people to focus on the fact that if you're going to create an all ages story, you just got to create something that is not maybe up in the violence department, the language, watch language, watch the themes that you're utilizing. A really good rule of thumb, and we don't do this anymore, is to even just reference the stuff that used to be okay. We're seeing all ages become this weird thing now that's just it's watered down, almost drivel at this point. There's no thematic morality or anything. There's almost no point to it. There's almost no sense of accomplishment, achievement, good, evil, conflict, anything. And if anything, children, especially, because that's going to be largely who you're probably aiming your all ages story to, children absolutely love the big concepts of conflict, good, evil, darker things. But you have to understand there's a difference between darker elements and evil and what appeals in an all ages kind of scenario, and those same concepts but really pushed and almost to like a vulgar extent when you're talking about 17 plus adult mature reader kind of stuff. Study the classics, study the people who did it best, and it's something that we just don't see a lot of nowadays. But that's what I would suggest to an all ages creator out there. All right, before I take a look at the rest of the chat here, how's it going, John?
Hey, who would win in a fight? King Cryptid, or Cyberfrog? Who would win?
King Crimson or King
Crimson,
Cryptid?
the progressive rock band, or Cyberfrog? Who would win in a fight?
Depends who's writing. What the hell happened to you? What's up with your neck?
Oh, I just assumed I passed out while driving. I think it was like a blood sugar thing, and I crashed into a tree and fractured my neck.
Oh, holy smokes, man.
So I had to shave my beard because this collar was driving me crazy. So there you go. This is me without my beard. When you cut your hair, though, it's a cut hair party.
It's a summer of change.
Yeah. I donated my beard to Locks of Love, and they kicked me out. How's that? They said, we don't want your dirty beard.
Yeah, I don't think they take. Well, it's got to be 10 inches or longer.
Oh my! Yeah, and apparently no dried meatloaf in the beard either. That
Well, that doesn't help, John.
yeah, picky bastards.
Oh man. Well, I'm
Well, I just
glad to see that you're okay, but
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
saddened to see that you're kind of not at the same time.
Yeah, I'm not in pain. I'm just a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm not in pain.
Okay.
8 weeks. In 3 weeks, I'll get another CAT scan to see if it's healing properly. If it's healing properly, I don't need surgery. If I need surgery, who knows? But so I'm off work, just haunting people's YouTube channels. So
Man, oh man. All right.
So
Well,
I like what you said about all ages comics. Of course, I'm going to plug my comic Heroic Tales, which is on Fund My Comic and Kickstarter. It's all ages, and I'm a big fan of all ages comics. I think I was going to say King Crimson again. King Cryptid is an all ages comic. You're doing it the right way, because we forget.
yeah, you can consider King Cryptid an all ages comic.
Right,
Sure.
you're not having nudity. You're not having excessive violence. The themes are but we forget, like Batman, Superman, the Claremont X-Men. These were all ages comics. All ages doesn't mean children. And you're right. When people saying all ages these days, I think what they really mean is young adult, which is a entirely different thing. But I'm a big fan of all ages. Harry Potter is all ages. Star Wars is all ages. And kids and grandparents all love Star Wars, or at least they used to. But you know what I mean? All ages.
Well, I think honestly, when people say all ages, I don't think they mean young adult. I think they mean like early reader. Like, remember like Spidey stories?
Right. I would consider that children.
But even Spidey stories are now more complex than most stuff that would be considered all ages today.
Yeah. Again, all ages is important. Like The Hobbit was all ages, but we wouldn't consider that kiddie. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Harry Potter, Peter Pan.
Yeah.
I could go on and on. Alice in Wonderland. These are all important. Charlotte's Web. I could read that as an adult and enjoy it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The all ages term has been hijacked into a marketing term for the book industry. It's sad, and that's the thing, is that everyone's thinking, and I see this conversation a lot about, you got to get out more comics for kids, and then you get to the kids and then they'll become comic readers, and the thing is that the best way for that to happen is that whatever kind of comics you think would be appropriate for a kid, give it to them as a gift. Just be like, hey, here, check these out. Or even if they like the movie versions of these characters or something, say, oh, you like so and so, whatever, here, read this character is in it. It doesn't have to be anything modern, it doesn't have to be anything like that, just anything that you think is worthwhile, that they would enjoy, that's appropriate to read for a kid.
Just look at Alterna. Like, I would say Baron Rat is more kiddie comics.
Totally.
But King Cryptid is more all ages. You know what I mean? You have different demographics, but children could still read. I think a precocious kid could read King Cryptid and enjoy it. Maybe they won't get like, where New Jersey is as opposed to Minnesota, but they'll understand the places. I think you're doing the right thing.
Well, that's the thing, is that I like being able to offer a bunch of different kinds of genres and things for different ages with the books and whatnot at Alterna, and that's the thing when it comes to focusing on, well, if you put this out, if you did this, if you did that, then it kind of Field of Dreams it. If you built it, they would come. But the thing is that what you want to do? I see a lot of people that say, we'll do this, do that, do the other thing, and then this outcome would happen. And the thing is that if it was that simple, then someone else already would have come along and did all that. So there's a lot more complexities to the equation. It doesn't mean, though, that you should shy away from making an all-ages book. It just means that if you're making an all-ages book, make it because you want to make an all-ages book.
Right.
If you sit there making any kind of book, whether it's all ages or for adults or action or horror or whatever, any creative endeavor, especially a comic, if you're making any of that, do it because you really want to tell that story. Because the last thing we need creatively in this world, or commercially especially, is just more people making it because they think they should make it. Make it because you really want to make it, because it means something to you. Get
Right.
that out there.
And I can't stress this, if you're making somebody else's intellectual material, honor the source. You know, I was just talking to people about the Rings of Power. Like, why are they making the Rings of Power and changing Tolkien? Who are you that gets to change Tolkien?
I don't even care about any of that.
Right, I don't care about it either.
Yeah.
But we were talking, so it was front loaded into my mind at this point.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're old enough to remember when Marvel Comics had the Star line. That was
Oh
for
yeah,
kids.
love that line. Yeah.
Yeah, it had like Care Bears and Ewoks and droids.
Yeah.
You know, and it was for the little kids. And then as they aged up, they went into Spider-Man. But nowadays, I really do think kids don't want to read Spider-Man. You know, I went and I bought a stack.
I think nowadays, to be perfectly honest, when it comes to that, I don't think they even know where the hell to start. I don't think they know where the hell to start. There's so much dilution across the board with the mainstream level with comics that it would be really difficult to have kids start reading, even if they were good, even if they were all good, they could all be these great stories. It would be difficult for kids to go in there and even have a clue as to wanting to just pick up that comic and read it, because they're no longer really episodic in the nature of you could pick up any issue and go, okay, I can read this and enjoy it. And then there's multiple titles across the board with various miniseries, with different timelines, with different this and that, different versions of Spider-Man all over the place. And
I don't like that.
you know,
at all.
it
dilutes it.
Yeah, it's a complete brand dilution across the board, because it's a flooding the market scenario to push anything else out there and kind of twist the arm of the retailer into getting that, instead of having the shelf space for other titles to offer an actual true diverse selection. And that's kind of just the way that it's been. But that's why when it comes to, you know, I think the impetus is on us. We have to actually take onto ourselves, if you've got, you know, nieces, nephews, kids, whatever it may be, to be like, okay, these comics would be okay for them. I think they might appeal to them, and then give it to them as a gift. Let them read it, and because they're not out there anymore. Like, kids aren't going to see them in stores. They're not going back to the stores.
The little kids are not driving to a comic book store.
Yeah, they're not going to whatever, if any, are left of convenience stores, and they're not going to go to 7-Eleven to go look at a comic book or something anyway. And they're not there even if they went there to go look for them.
Yes.
So, you know,
yeah.
So we have to be the people that go out there and say that read that, whether it's an independent that would be great for them, or whether it's something that maybe was out 20, 30 years ago, and turn them on to that and say, hey, you know, check this out. You might enjoy it.
I went to Free Comic Book Day a couple of months ago, and it was just packed with people. And I ended up talking to this father and the daughter. The daughter was 16 years old, and she was talking about she just got into comics, you know, maybe a year before that. So at 15, she got into comics. So I was like, what comics do you like? And she said she specifically likes comics from the 90s and below because of the numbering. She goes, if I got Thor 212 and inside it said, look at Thor 162, she goes, I could do the math in my head, realize that it was 26 months earlier. I could kind of estimate the price and cost and where, you know what I mean? She goes, but nowadays, like, you read Captain America, it's volume 6, it's volume 4. She goes, there's no frame of reference, and I feel lost. And I was like, wow, I'm so glad that a kid said the same thing that I've been saying. You know, it makes me feel like, all right, these kids, there's hope in the future. But
there's also a fact too of like, you know, they're getting into, obviously manga is kicking butt,
right? Because it's easy. You
you
want to get into
it's easy. They can all get into it. Right. They can all have a shared experience too. Right. You know, think about it, like if professional sports was 300 teams, you know, if every single state had 20 teams, and you dilute the brand across the board to the extent that it's confusing as all hell. And it's the same thing that's happened with mainstream comics. It's diluted all over the place. So who do you root for? Who do you have that conversation with? Well, it's going to be more and more difficult to find that person to do that. And I say this when it's San Diego Comic-Con weekend.
Right.
But
Did you
Yet
see
at the meantime, the majority of it is more of like a pop culture con at this point, as opposed to a comic con.
and we all know Deadpool just came out this weekend, and what did Marvel Comics do? Kill off Deadpool, and now there's Lady Deadpool comics.
Yeah, everything
Right
is.
after freaking movie debuts, they cancel the comic and put out Marvel. Are you trying to kill yourselves?
I mean, people are going to read whatever they want to read. They're going to like what they want to like. It is what it is. But I personally cannot get into any of it anymore at this point.
Right. I'm done with that. I'm talking about how not to run a comic book company. Could you imagine a King Cryptid movie comes out and you cancel King Cryptid and you put out Miss Cryptid? You know what I mean?
Well, Queen Cryptid,
Hey, what are you doing? I don't know. I really don't want to sell comics.
It's just the turnstile of marketing.
Right. It's somebody in the committee had an idea, and I guess other people were too afraid to speak up. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah. Well,
speaking of which, issue 2 of the Patriarch features the Matriarch. He's gender swapped from another dimension. That's I'm making a facetious joke, but whatever.
I almost thought you were serious there.
No way.
You usually got to get to like issue 200 before you start digging into the desperation barrel.
I'm with every issue's number 1 and every issue's a reboot. How's that? Now, all kidding aside, if you see my link, I got a Heroic Tales number 1. Every issue, just like Pete does, you can pick up King Cryptid and understand it. You know what I mean? Every issue is going to be a complete story, because I think that's something everything doesn't have to be a 15-issue epic, especially, 9 months between issues, a year between issues. I don't think that's a good model going forward. I like what you do. You put up 5 issues at a time, 4 issues at a time. You know what I mean? But I can't do that yet. So every issue is complete. $10, every issue is complete. If I want to make a big epic story, I'll make a big epic issue.
Exactly. Just give people a story. That's where I think comics have really kind of gone off the rails with a lot of things, is because it's not really about giving anyone a story anymore. It's not really about everyone was a cheap form of entertainment, but it's like, well, it's got to first be just a form of entertainment first.
Let me ask you this: do you think there's a lot of people who just buy comics and don't read them?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a big problem. I know my buddy Mark, and he'll get mad that I mention his name. He's been collecting Batman for 15 years, and I don't think he's read Batman in 17 years. So I asked him, I said, do you like what's going on in the stories? He's like, when I retire, I'm going to read them all. I'm like, you're part of the problem.
Don't spend your retirement like that.
Yeah. You're part of the
problem. Have fun with your retirement.
That's why comics are so bad, because people just automatically buy them.
But yeah, no, it's become a strange industry. And that's why I hate, I don't know if you saw the first half of the show, but I was just kind of reflecting upon some of the different things of the mistakes that I've made, the things that I've thought wrong. Oh, I've made plenty, and I'll make more.
Mistakes, you've made a few, but then again, too few to mention.
Yeah, that's it, But that's...
my first issue didn't come out, and I already know what not to do for issue number 2.
Oh yeah. Every single issue is a learning experience. Every single day is a learning experience. But what I was talking about also had to do with the fact that seeing the giant mess of the mainstream and starting to see the eerie shadows of it slowly creeping into the indie realm, and it's just. I just shake my head and I'm like, why? It doesn't need to be that way. I'm past the point of like, I haven't dived into this craziness in almost 2 years. And it's one of those things where I'm just like, man, a bunch of people are probably going to look back years from now, or hopefully sooner than that, and go, why did I waste that much time? I could have put out some amazing things, be really creative and made an impact like that, instead of just being like, what's this person doing here? What's that person doing there? Who cares? Let them do whatever. People are going to stumble. People are going to make bad comics. People are, let's put it this way. John, you've read a lot of comics. Most comics aren't that great.
Right.
even from the greats.
90% of everything is crap.
Yeah, even from the greats, there's a lot of crap.
Right.
You know? So it's one of those things where, okay, if a comic is bad, it's bad. All right. Well, hopefully the next one won't be that bad. And if you don't want to read that one, all right, hopefully you read something that you like and you enjoy. Or if you're a creator, hopefully you're creating something that you're passionate about and you're doing so much of it that anytime you pick up your head from, your creativity and you look around and you're like, wow, what's going on over there? I mean, that kind of sucks. And then you just go back to doing what you're doing.
What gets me is this right now, there really is, you could argue that this is a kind of a golden age of comics because you could find anything, especially if you want to go online, and go on YouTube and find comics. So why dwell on the stuff that you don't like and talk about it constantly?
Oh yeah, seriously. Yeah, life is too short.
I don't understand it, man. I'm going to be talking about a comic book that I don't like for 3 years.
Exactly, and that's kind of what I was talking about in the beginning of the show, because these Alterna remastered editions are kind of making me walk down memory lane a bit, and there's a lot of bittersweet memories that come with that of different editions that I would have liked to have a part of this remastered set, but contractually I just can't. Right. And different things where, some things went sour, some things went normal and amicable, and then other things like burst into a blaze of, horror and and things that I just never had foreseen coming at that point in time when this book was originally coming out. So thinking about all that of the certain events that transpired, it really got me thinking about not just the interactions with those creators, but also just the events that surrounded the timeline of since we came out with those newsprint books in 2017, and then how many different things have changed, how many different things have kind of gone the way they've gone, how much I've changed in some ways, and how much more I'm still working on myself and trying to get to a point that I want to be, both as a creator and as a person. So it's just kind of, I didn't think it was going to hit me the way that it did doing these remastered editions, but it was interesting, and I was like, let me talk about that tonight and kind of share with everybody, because sometimes there's this veil of like, I don't know, I've talked to so many people where they think like I'm better than I am. And it's like,
not me, man. I don't think you're that good. So
that's the way to approach it, And don't place too high of expectations on me, because I'm trying to do my best, and sometimes my best, man, it ain't good enough. But it doesn't mean I'm going to give up.
That between the both of us, the amount of hair loss between both of us. Last time I saw you had.
Hey, you make comics, that's what happens.
You cut your hair, I cut my beard. We're like two fresh little kids over here talking.
Well, you need to be made for speed. If you want to get faster, the hair is just keeping you behind like a cyclist.
So I'm sure you talked about this at the beginning. I missed it because I was doing my own street. What made you want to remaster some of your?
Well, we did the Hall of Fame books, and they came out really nice. And I hit a point where looking at the misprints and trying to judge whether or not we should throw them out, because they forgot to put the prismatic holo effect on the cover. They were supposed to do 2 layers, and the second layer would have really made them pop. And they forgot to do that, and they sent that to me. And I was like, do I throw these away? I'm like, they look so great other than that one thing. But I'm like, I can't really sell them. I ended up giving the misprints as well to the people who purchased the issues once the proper versions came in. But it got me thinking, like, well, maybe we can actually do like premium editions now too, because the printing has now gotten to a point where we can do that. It's going to be definitely more expensive than our newsprint issues. They're $7 a piece right now. They'll be $8 after the pre-order period. But we can still do them and not have to print like 1,000 of each the way it would have been like 5 or 6 years ago to get them to look good. And the printing was phenomenal. So it just seemed to make sense. Like the timing was right, and finding this printer, and that's kind of what came about, because people have been asking for premium editions for years since we've been doing the newsprint. Because some people like the newsprint, and then other people, the newsprint's not going anywhere.
I love the newsprint. That's when I saw your comics newsprint at the comic book store at Fourth World Comics in Long Island. is where I first saw Alterna Comics. I was like, "What's going? Is this old? What's going on?" And at the time, what was it, $1.50? I think it was. Why can't I remember the Russian?
Yeah, it was $1.50.
Oh, the
when we
Russian.
came out with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh my god, I brought it up to the counter. I was all confused. I'm like, this is a newsprint. It's $1.50. What? How did I miss this? The guy's like, it's brand new, buddy. And that was it. I was hooked ever since.
Yeah,
So,
well, newsprint ain't going anywhere,
Good,
so
good.
we'll still have that. But these will be a run of either 50 or 100, depending on how the funding period goes. So there'll be a small, limited batch of them that
And
gets
people
made.
like the collector editions of stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see some of them because, like Red Koi, for instance, is like almost a complete different reading experience because of the color usage and the black, especially in the borders and things like that Tyler has. It really pops nicely on the premium stocks.
oh, you could get Blood Realm, print like 20 of them and have Rob Geronimo's actual blood as the red.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we won't, but we could.
You could, but also put a disclaimer: don't touch the blood until it dries, because we don't know where Rob Geronimo's been.
Well, I mean, he's in Staten Island, so we have an idea. We have an idea.
Allegedly.
But
Yeah.
John, before I let you go, anything else you
believe it or
wanna
not,
say?
eat dinner yet? Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, take it easy, my friend, and good to see you.
Good to see you, Pete. Good to see everything's still going good. Big fan of Alterna. I'm still an Alterna fanboy. I get everything you guys put out.
I appreciate that, man.
Really like it.
And
All right. I'm gonna get going.
well soon. Godspeed to you.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Take it easy. All right. Up next here we got Jason. What's up, Jason?
I was so enthralled, I forgot I was even back there. You guys.
Well, now you're
brushed...
up here.
Yeah, now I'm up here. No, you guys actually brushed up on a few things that I was even going to ask about because I missed the first half. I was out and about in real life doing things. I was going to yeah, it is good. It's good. I encourage everybody to get out there. But no, I was going to ask what mistakes did you think? Because you I know you say don't look at me this way, but a lot of us in the indie scene and the self-publishing scene, we're like, look what Pete's doing. Look what Pete's doing. You know what I mean? We kind of do hold you up there a little bit, and we're like, if he can do, he's doing this, and it's great. So it can be done. So, but as far as maybe something you can mention, what it might be a mistake you figure that you might have made that you learned from in this experience.
Oh man, I think the biggest mistake looking back right now. The biggest mistake I made was distribution.
Really?
And,
you don't think you should have done that?
No, not and it's not even one of those ones that I look at it and go, well, if we didn't go to distribution, would we have had some of the readers and this and that? And the thing is that when we went through distribution, I had figured that, okay, well, if we can sell 200 or 300 on our own, we'll sell 2,000 or 3,000 through distribution. And we were just doing print on demand at the time, and then we were going to go into distribution with graphic novels, and that's how it was going to be wow, we could probably sell a lot more because we were going through 3 or 4 print on demand printings of graphic novels, and we would do 100 to 200 at a time. And then getting into distribution, it was kind of a constant just keep lying to yourself, because we would get the purchase order back after busting our butts and promoting them and getting to the retailers and trying to get as much press releases out as we could and all this other stuff. And the orders would come in and they'd be pretty much at the same numbers that we were doing when we were selling print on demand, but we'd be losing 62% of the sale.
Okay.
So, yeah, so it helped to justify a larger print run sometime. But sometime to get the quality of that larger print run, which is what I was kind of talking about with the remastered editions now, where you can kind of do these smaller runs and the quality is becoming almost indistinguishable from a larger offset run. Mm-hmm. In some cases, I used to easily be able to spot the difference of okay, here's a digital print on demand book, here's an offset printed professional quality book. And on the Hall of Fame books that we just did, the interiors especially, I could not tell a difference. It looks like it's straight out of an offset run.
Nice.
The paper quality is ridiculous. The printing on it is even better than some of the offset books that I've seen done in terms of like the black coverage where it's even and it's deep. So that was like really the thing that made me go, wow, we can actually do these remastered editions. But back then, you know, when you were going into like spending like $4,000 on a print run on a graphic novel because you had to get like that professional quality and maintain some kind of economy of scale, it was gut wrenching to get back that purchase order that was like 200 or 300 books, and you were like, wow, I'm only going to make like $800 back on this out of this $4,000 run, and there was no crowdfunding.
Right.
So I accrued a mega crap ton of personal debt in like the first 2 years of Alterna, getting these print runs out when we had distribution, because there was no way to kind of cover any of that without just diving into it and hoping that there would be a response. And you would get actively discouraged from Diamond. Don't sell these direct. You might not even want to sell these at a convention because you're going to cannibalize your sales and blah, 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 right? And then when crowdfunding came along, they really actively discouraged that, and so did a lot of retailers. Some retailers would outright boycott us because we were doing crowdfunding on some of the books, because they're like, well, you just sold to all of your audience. And I'm like, if you think our entirety of an audience is like 150 people that backed this Kickstarter, you know, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's really sad. Like, you don't think you can sell 1 or 2 copies in your store to anybody who comes in? Like, what's going on with this industry?
Right.
So distribution for me was one of the biggest, like, looking back at it, I'm like, we could have been where we are now, but probably faster and without a boatload of overhead if we hadn't gone through distribution. Right. But it was one of those things of like, it's a learning experience because you got no other way to view it. I did it, and you know, eventually I had to go, especially when we had the newsprint come out. And that was a real big learning experience when we lost like thousands upon thousands of reorders because we just weren't getting the purchase orders from Diamond. That was what caused me to go, we got to start selling direct. I don't care if Diamond is like, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. I don't care if the retailers are going to boycott us further and say, we're not getting them in the store then if you sell direct. Because when we went to newsstand, oh, man, that like the shit hit the fan. I thought retailers were going to love that. I got like hate mail from retailers about that. I got like retailers giving me crap on Facebook. I had retailers being like, that's it, not carrying your stuff anymore. I was like, well, it's going to newsstand 2 months after you guys get it.
Right.
So the whole point is that the people could find it, and that the way the system was working was that every 2 months we'd have an issue out. So issue 1 would be out, 2 months later the newsstand would get it, but then 2 months later also issue 2 would be in comic shops. So the whole point, we had an ad on the back of the newsstand issues that would say, go to your local comic shop and go to comicshoplocator.com. And that thing would basically say, okay, go pick up the next issue that's at the comic shop. So it was like kind of actively like discouraging people from going to get these on newsstand, but acknowledging that the newsstand would have wider distribution coverage and be like advertising for us.
Right.
I would explain that to the retailers. They still didn't care. And then I'd go, well, do you not carry anything that's sold on Amazon or Walmart or at any Barnes & Noble? And you got no Funko Pops in that store? You know? Right. And they don't like that at all either, you know, when you say something like that. So that really pissed off some of them. So I didn't make many friends when we did that. And if anything, I thought at the time that they were going to really like that idea, because that's when comics were doing great, was one hand washing the other. You had the mainstream footprint with distribution and newsstand, and then you had the comic shop localized to pick up anything you might have missed and discover more stuff that maybe wasn't going through newsstand. But then here was this avalanche of retailers that were pissed off. And our sales probably nosedived like 35% after that decision.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was insane. And then it was just like one thing after the other, which culminated in like a crazy August of 2018. And even that was like, wow, what a learning experience. Because it was insanity that summer with everything.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense, because if the other one's in the newsstand, you're promoting, hey, go to your shop. So you're promoting the shop along with selling on the newsstand. So, and also, if they can't sell a book to a stranger, like 150 people is your only demographic, it's like how many people just shop at the comic shop that know nothing about this? Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's totally illogical. I can't count how many people, like I'm at my LCS quite frequently up front, like drawing or doing signings or whatever, and a lot of them come up. They have no idea who I am. Never heard of me in their life. Have no idea about, what's an indie. I even hear it all the time. What's an Indiegogo? And I'm like, well, have you heard of Kickstarter? They're like a little, like they don't even know what Kickstarter is. So there's a lot of people, like you said earlier, a lot of people are not online. There's a lot of people that just aren't online. I have the the little QR codes for my social media. I get asked all the time, do you have a business card? There's a lot of people that just aren't online and that don't know about this whole thing. So, I mean, that is interesting, though, that the distribution, which is something a lot of us are like, we want to get distribution.
Yeah,
like,
every time I see that, I'm like, oh, I hope the best. I hope the best, because it could be a crushing thing. Like, even like Free Comic Book Day, for instance, we were in that, I think, either 3 or 4 times. And the first time we were in it, we put out, and no one ever done it before, we put out a trade paperback. We did an anthology trade paperback. It was like 70 pages or something like that.
Oh, for Free Comic Book Day?
And for Free Comic Book Day.
Wow.
It cost us 40 cents a piece. We sold it at $0.25 a piece. We took a 15-cent hit on each book, and we sold like 20,000 copies. So that was a lot of money sunk into that out of pocket. I heard from all these retailers at the time how great it did. Right? So I thought, okay, we're going to start, because it had a sampling. It had an original story, and then it also had a sampling of all the books we had out at the time. And I thought, okay, we're going to get more orders on these. We didn't get a tick, not a % increase in any of the orders on those books.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, we just sold over 20,000 of these to retailers. I must have heard from over 100 that had told me that they were gone within 5 minutes, the ones that they had in the store. And you guys didn't order any more of anything we did. You didn't place a back order on any of the stuff that was being promoted in there. It's the strangest thing, because every single time I had a conversation with retailers about how do we sell more of our books, it was about us finding a way to send our customers to them. Almost as if the store didn't actually have a customer base in any way, shape, or form. We would have to figure out a way from wherever we are to go to wherever they are in that town, in that whatever, in that vicinity, and market to them. Almost like we would have to do the equivalent of like a direct mail campaign to let people know that like Alterna was at the local comic shop, instead of the local comic shop doing a direct mail campaign to let people know that their comic shop exists. And come in and get 10% off your purchase or blah 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 with this flyer or something.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wrap my head around that. Around like, if I'm supposed to do all that work and send the customer to the retailer, in the day and age where I can have a website and I'm getting people from online to then tell them to go to someone else's store to surrender 62% of the sale, why don't I just keep that and they can order from us direct?
Correct.
And I thought that that's really weird, that the retailer really wants a situation where the product sells itself to the extent that they just need to be the shelf that houses the product. I thought that's a real slippery slope, because eventually you're going to have people realize, why am I paying that to have you have that? I can just have a shipping department ship out the orders from a website and keep all that money.
Not only that, a fan is going to appreciate that more because they have better customer service usually in that regard, because they dealing directly with you or me. I mean, I'm very small, but either which way, the customer service is even better. Your quality is going to be better because you're just going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, your book was like damaged or something. So
you're more responsive to it usually.
Exactly. So and pushing the book out, like getting the free comic out there, if it wiped out instantly, almost, it sounds like, I would be like, if I owned a shop, I'd be like, wow, people are really liking this book, I'm gonna order some Alterna.
I gotta make sure I get some in. To capitalize on.
It's something I've never understood. A lot of these places and companies, they don't like money, and I don't understand. I don't know about you, Pete, I love money. I like money. I like doing comics.
It helps you to be able to do the things you want to do in your life.
Exactly. So I mean, I was curious because, like I said, I missed the first few parts of the stream, and I'm like, you hit on a lot of cylinders. Your books do well. I love them. A lot of people love them, but and like we all make mistakes. Like going in through all this stuff. Like you even said, you're making a mistake in your first, second, third, fourth.
Oh
fifth.
yeah.
And it will keep going. But like people don't get to see the behind the scenes stuff all too often anyway. So they're just like, oh, he seems to be doing well. So
exactly. Yeah. And there's that kind of thing where I see a lot of people out there getting so discouraged because like it's tough enough. Like everything is tough right now across the board, not just comics wise, just everything is tough. And in some way, shape or form, it's always going to be, life is just difficult.
Yeah.
It's always going to be difficult one way or the other. But then when you're really trying to achieve something that you want so much with your heart, you're trying to achieve a dream, you're trying to do whatever, and you see some people succeed with what seems like ease, or you see some people kind of what looks like they're squandering that success maybe, and they're using it to like bicker and go at each other and not concentrate on what the actual goal and the matter at hand is that's important, but to be lost in it. And I see a lot of independent creators out there getting so kind of discouraged and too much talk of people thinking like, well, do I really want to create comics? This is what it's like? And it's like not even people like want to read comics, because that conversation is starting to turn like into a whole other, almost approaching a level of a lost cause with some people because they become so discouraged. But people just not wanting to create, not wanting to even try, because they're looking at everything and going, well, what's the point?
Yeah. Well, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and so like, I'm just trying to offer the fact that like, yeah, I've been there too. I've been in those moments where I'm thinking like, what the hell's the point of this? And I'm trying and I'm messing up and this and that and whatever's going on, and things don't work with some creators sometimes, things don't work with some books sometimes, distribution deals, or they get weird, all kinds of things. You're going to be up against all kinds of obstacles. But the thing is that if you want it enough and you get creative with it, you'll find avenues around it. You'll find ways to adapt. You'll find ways to succeed and push past and move forward and be in what matters, which is the moment right now, realizing don't get lost in the bullshit and in the nonsense, and really focus and think about what matters to you and what it is you're trying to accomplish and achieve. Because if people are getting lost and kind of pinning their hopes and dreams and accomplishments on what everyone else they see, what they're doing out there, or what it's like for them, or the struggles that other people are having, and they're thinking like, oh man, I'm gonna have the same awful time too that it looks like everyone else is having, and they get deterred from that. Don't start thinking about that, because it's easy to focus on that, and you don't see maybe the hundreds or thousands of others of people who are actually having a great time, enjoying it, working for it, and having success out of it, however they define success. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to get kind of sucked into the negative and stay there,
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, I'm not. No, keep going.
No. But what were you?
No, no. I mean, like even in your header, it even says set small goals, and that's a great segue into that. Like like if you're focused on what you're I got to make a book. That's kind of a big picture to this. Okay, well, how do I go about it? The journey is the fun part. Like you said, don't focus it. There's a lot of these channels out there. There's a lot of like tip channels or talking head channels or comic channels. Like you try to tune out the negative ones, and you can tell which ones are the negative ones. Try to tune them out. And like you said, I've had setbacks. I've had down times, and I've only been doing this 4 years. I've had plenty, maybe 5, going on 5, plenty of times where I'm like, what? But I love doing this. It's so much fun. Like it's so much fun making comics. Like it really is. It's exhilarating, and it's a dream, and you have to love it. But like you said, it's a small goal though. Like, okay, I need to do my first book. Like get the concept out, get your ideas down, write it. Like set small little steps, and once you get to that bigger picture, like even research. Like, okay, how much is it going to cost to print? Like small little itty bitty things. And then once you get everything out there, that big goal, that book getting in somebody's hands, dude, I've always said, I love doing comics. Art is a passion. I've always loved doing it. I'm 45. I've been doing it for 40 years. You know what I mean? But I love it. I think I love it more when I see people with their book in their hand saying, this is awesome. Like, the joy that they get from it, it's indescribable. It's so cool, you know? So
Absolutely.
it's fun. So you got to love doing this, like you said. So you can't just be a thing like, I can maybe do a comic. It's like, well, then this is going to break you, pal.
And exactly, because that's a part of it too, where it really is this journey of self-discovery, you know, and pushing yourself and seeing like, okay, well, it looks like I'm making progress with that. You know, I kind of struggle with this. Don't look at that as something to avoid. Like, let's say, you know, you struggle with animals, or you struggle with drawings. A lot of people struggle with drawing women, or a lot of people struggle with drawing the full figure instead of just drawing the face or the backgrounds. Or
we guessed earlier,
a multitude.
Panel work.
Yeah, panel work, composition, all that kind of stuff. You know, don't avoid that and look at it as something to fear. Instead, go into it head on and be like, all right, here's another thing that I can learn more about, and see how much can I push myself, how much can I learn, how much can I move past that point. And don't look at what other people are doing or what they've accomplished. If you're going to start comparing yourself, if you're going to look at what other people are doing, look at what they're doing. Look at who your favorite artist or writer or whoever your favorite creator is. Look at them, and then immediately, if you really love what it is you're seeing that they're doing, immediately have the thought, if you are just starting off, have that thought that at one point in time, that looked like crap. They didn't know what they were doing. They were completely lost, felt they were in over their head, and they just went for it. And they did it over and over and over again, and they took their time, and they made the effort, and then they got it to where you see it now, and you're in awe. But at one point in time when they started, they didn't know what the hell they were doing, and it didn't look the way you think it looks now. There's this kind of illusion where we see on, especially in the day and age of social media, where everything is like appearances, where everyone looks like they've just, boom, they're plopped onto the scene, they're established, they're experienced, and they're a pro and an expert, you know, and you lose sight of the journey that they had to take to get to even what looks like that they're competent in what they're doing. Exactly.
Yep.
You know, so it's that kind of thing. There's so much active discouragement out there, whether it's just the attitudes, whether it's the conversation, whether it's people that are looking at someone else's success and then feeling like, oh, well, I'll never be that good, or whatever it is. And it's like, stop doing that. Focus on what it is you want to do and get to work on that. And stop doing this other stuff that's preventing you from achieving any of the things you want to achieve. And that's kind of what really was the driving force behind tonight, to just let people know, like, I'm taking a walk down memory lane with these alternative remastered editions, thinking of like the bittersweet memories and things like that have come about with some of the ones that I wish, you know, some of the books that I was like, I wish these were still here, so contractually we could do this edition, but we can't. And then, you know, for some creators, it was like, oh, we parted ways and it was nice and it was fine. And then for other creators, it was like, what the hell happened there?
Right.
You know, I'm like, they're mortal enemy now or something. And I'm like, I never set out to do that. But it's one of those things of looking back at it. It just kind of was a whole host of things, thinking about the course of events over the past several years, and how some people are probably out there that I see that are discouraged, thinking like, well, what's the point, and you know, this and that. It's like, well, you're gonna have obstacles, and you're gonna have all these things happen, and you're gonna have things not go your way at certain points in time. But how much does this matter to you? How much do you want it? How much do you care? You know, and that's a question where I don't think a lot of people end up asking themselves until they get to like their breaking point. And and you gotta really try to, the sooner you understand yourself and you can define yourself, the less of a chance of you letting other people do it for you.
Yeah. And I've always said this a million times, surround yourself with good, positive people as well. Like, that's a big key in a lot of this. It is a helping fact. Like, it helps to have people to lean on in those times of struggle. So, yeah. No, I just wanted to ask that. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
No problem, man.
Yeah, have a good one, man. See you later.
Yeah, you too. Always a pleasure, Jason.
Always,
take it easy, brother.
Yep.
All right, so we're at the 2:20 mark. I'm going to be wrapping it up tonight. Everybody, thank you guys so much. This went longer than I thought, but there was a lot to talk about, and I'm glad that this kind of struck a chord with some people too. And if you're having any kind of if you're a creator out there and you're struggling, you're having moments where you're getting discouraged and maybe feeling like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to work at it? That's okay to have that. Everybody has had that. And if you do end up coming up with the decision of, all right, you know what, I'm going to stop. I'm going to kind of readjust my focus here because I'm obviously not doing things that are working out and are healthy and good for me. Because I don't want to see anybody lose their damn minds or lose every penny they have trying to make a comic or achieve their comic book dreams. But if that's a dream of yours, if that's a goal of yours, if that's something you want to do, you don't have to change that goal. Maybe you have to change some strategy. Maybe you have to readjust. Maybe you have to learn more. Never be ashamed of that fact that you maybe have to take a little step back and reassess, and then you can move forward. Don't get so discouraged that you feel like the only answer is to give up. Don't be so discouraged that you feel like no matter how hard you work, you'll never make it. Figure out what it is that means something to you. Figure out what it is that you're trying to achieve. Figure out what it is that you want to do that matters, not just to you, but that you think would also matter to those that'll enjoy it and read it, pick it up, whatever it may be. There's a lot of great stuff with this comic book thing. And I know a lot of the time we can see and get sucked into the negativity of all of it, but I promise you that there's far more positives out there than there are negatives. But keep it up. Anyway, thank you guys for listening tonight. Thank you if you're out there and you're a reader. Thank you for reading, whether it's my comics or someone else's comics. I hope you're enjoying this sort of stuff. I hope you're having a good time with it. And if you're a creator out there, keep creating. Keep your head up. Keep your chin down. Get to work. And don't get sucked into the nonsense and the foolishness. Keep your eyes on the prize. Stay focused on what it is you want to achieve. All right, guys, take it easy. All the best to you. Have a wonderful night and an even better tomorrow. I'll see you guys soon. All the best.